Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
Hi,
Hello, Elias. Hi. How are you?
أهلا. How are you doing?
أنا معك كامران.
Of course. أهلا, Kamran. أهلا.
So nice to see you here.
Thank you.
So, and we have Nadim.
Hayat, hello everybody.
Hi.
أهلا, Nadim.
كيفك أستاذ؟
معلق.
So
Nadim is our leader.
Elias,
Yes.
do you remember Kamran from
Of course.
New York days? Yeah.
Actually,
Yes.
I wrote 5 lines for the lecture, saying that the question is very, very difficult for me. So I want my professor Nadim to tackle the issue.
Are you ready, Nadim?
This is Elias's way to yeah. He's the one.
Yes.
So listen, the way we want to do this, Courtney, hi, it's good to meet you on virtually.
Nice to meet you.
Hope that starting next week we will or so we'll start meeting in person. So let me say, Kamran and I spoke about this, and here's what we are thinking to do. So if we start 12, or we usually start a couple of 2 minutes after 12, but we can start at 12, and I will just say a couple of welcoming words, and then Kamran will take over and introduce Elias, and then Elias will talk for about Elias, for how long do you want to talk? We talked about,
I think 45 minutes would be great, but whatever you have in mind.
50,
I mean, you can.
something like
50.
50. I think it will take 50 minutes.
Okay,
it will
that's perfect.
take what?
50.
I'm sorry, I missed that. It will take what?
About 50
50.
minutes.
50?
Yes.
Yeah,
50.
okay. Yeah, so
50.
yeah, and then we'll have enough time for questions and answers. So that's great. And you know, Elias knows it's recorded, and we'll put it on our website. I think it will be you know, we are hoping to do this as an annual thing. We are hoping, we haven't decided yet, but it's really great to have Elias with us to be the first of this annual event series.
Yeah, but look, Nadim, this is unfair. I wanted to come to Boston, so you are zooming me like this.
We'll bring you next.
No, this is not in lieu of coming and dining in that famous restaurant.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Kamran, I took
Yes.
Elias to a restaurant that was supposed, some friends called and said we are at that restaurant, and I thought it's really, you know, a Middle Eastern restaurant called, I forgot the name, in Cambridge,
Yeah.
and it was a disaster that we can't forget.
Oh no. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, just a couple of other comments. Elias, just mindful of electricity in Beirut. Do you think there is any reason that we should be concerned?
Yes, of course. If I disappear because of electricity,
yes.
Normally we have a generator, so it will come back in 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
So in that case, you have to take over.
Yeah.
Because I will just disappear, like.
And hopefully come back.
No, and electricity will come back because you have a generator. Yeah. Because electricity is terrifying. And actually, I will try to go to my phone, but
okay.
lecturing through phone is a little bit.
Yeah.
How's the quality? How's the quality of Elias's voice now? It's not very clear. What do you think? Elias, say some more words.
Hello. No, it's clear. Don't you
What do you
understand?
think?
No, I think it's clear.
I think given the connection, it's good. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure there's much we can do about it.
Okay.
And
You know, in 3 weeks maybe we will have a total black out in Beirut. There will be no electricity at all.
I know.
So and now we feel very happy that we can have internet and computer and whatever.
Yeah. Elias, on a personal note, are you vaccinated?
I took the first shot,
Okay.
and in
Okay.
2 weeks I'll have the second one.
Okay,
Good, good.
wonderful. Wonderful. Happy to hear that. And your wife?
Yes, both of them.
Yeah.
Good.
And you, Nadim?
I just got the second one on last Saturday. This is
Yeah.
why I told Courtney that in a week or two, I'll start hopping to school and to the Ferris Center. And,
What Pfizer? What?
I took Moderna.
That's
Huh.
simple. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Anything is good. Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, they're all good. They're all good.
And Kamran is young to ask him. Too young.
Well, no, actually, I just had my first one 2 days ago, so I have
Congratulations.
to go back in 3 weeks. But they're finally making it more available. So,
So
Courtney, are you getting it? You are. Yet or no?
Monday is my first
Monday.
shot.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Very
Follow.
happy.
No, by the end of summer, I think it's over. It will be over. We can
Hopefully.
color.
Yeah, hopefully.
We will become human beings once again. And
Inshallah.
in Beirut, this COVID, and then with the crisis and with the
Yeah, that's the other.
it's unbearable. By all means, it's unbearable.
Yeah.
The COVID and what?
The economic crisis.
The economic. Oh, goodness.
Economic
Oh,
and
wow.
political crisis. يعني,
Yeah, it's all the same.
it's becoming terrifying. I don't know how we can survive. Anyway, that's fine.
Yeah.
And we can write and
Yeah. Kamran, you read Arabic. Of course, you teach Arabic, right?
Yes.
I'll send you some of Elias's recent columns. He has a weekly column, actually, and mostly has been focusing on what's happening in Lebanon lately.
I want to read them. Yeah.
yups. And how is everything? You are teaching or it's on Zoom also?
Mostly on Zoom, I think, for us still. So we're finishing the semester. I think we're just going to be doing Zoom, and maybe next fall we'll be back in person, most of us.
Good.
Yeah.
We haven't decided, Kamran. The school hasn't decided, right? Or
I don't know about Fletcher, but the arts and sciences, they're saying we should prepare for coming back. I don't know what that means.
yeah, in
but
full, not hybrid.
they're saying they want as many people as possible to teach in person. They want to have some courses hybrid. So most of us, I think, will be teaching in person. Yeah, but
That's
remains to
better.
be seen. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still careful because of the variants and things. I mean, things might change, who knows? But let's cross fingers.
Because teaching on Zoom is terrible.
No, it's not fun. Elias, are you teaching right now? Are you at LAU or no?
No, خلاص.
No, that.
No. If I want to teach, I want to go to a real university, LAU. No,
Okay. Well,
it's not something.
there are some good students there. You know.
There are good students everywhere, but
Yeah.
the school itself is not. Anyway,
Yeah.
no, I'm not teaching. I'm only editing the journal of Palestine Studies and finishing my novel must be finished in 3 months from now. So.
Okay.
That is the
See, Rachel is coming.
it's the follow-up to My Name is Adam.
Yes, it's the third volume. The second volume, actually, today I had a long meeting with my translator. He just finished it in English. So hopefully
okay.
it will come out. It will come out in New York in the fall. Something like that.
But in Arabic, it's out?
The second volume
Second
is out, yeah.
volume.
Oh.
It's called the Stella Maris.
When did it get out? So I'm behind.
Last year. You are behind everything, Nadim. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Well,
You have
I
to push
did.
it.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I do. Okay.
No problem.
Interrupt. Do you want me to start letting people in to the meeting now that it's noon?
Maybe we should,
Wait.
how many people are in the waiting?
We have
room?
46. We have like over 100 registered, so I don't know if you want to wait.
Yeah, maybe let's wait for one more minute.
Yes.
And then, because I think when we start, we should just go right into it. So,
Yeah, we just start.
so I think they can wait.
I sent them a message that it would short.
That's good. Yeah, we'll be starting shortly. That's good. They'll wait.
Yeah, it's 12:01 and yeah, 12:02.
So the only other thing I just wanted to double check before we started. So Courtney, the way that this is set up, people have to submit questions, right? We don't do in-person Q&A.
So this is a meeting set up, so they can do in person.
Okay.
So
with 100 people, it might be a little difficult. I wonder if we should just encourage people to use the chat, and maybe if you know, depending on things, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. But if it's difficult, maybe could you be monitoring and
absolutely,
and
yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure I don't miss a question or something. I don't want to, you know, if it gets too chaotic. We'll see. I mean, maybe it's totally fine. But if we start getting a lot of questions at once, it might be, you know.
Difficult, yeah.
Okay. That would be great.
So, Kamran, you have everything you wanted to arrange with Courtney is there?
I think so. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think there's the main concerns were about what to do if the electricity cuts. So I think that we have a plan, and maybe I'll just mention that, or maybe Nadim, if you want to, just mention if there is a cut, we'll come right back and just be patient. And then the second is just tell people to write their questions in the Q&A. We'll monitor the Q&A and the chat and try to you know, address them one at a time.
We are ready to go on air.
Okay, I will let them in.
So, Courtney, I'm waiting for a sign from you to start, right?
Okay.
Nadim.
Yes, you can start. I think everyone is in from the waiting room.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can
Courtney,
start, right? Let's go ahead.
Please mute everyone.
Episode.
I don't know why there is
Please
no.
mute everyone. Okay.
Okay, let's start our session.
Let me see. what we have.
I am Nadim Rouhana. I'm the director of the Faris Center for Eastern Mediterranean Studies at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. Was I muted? Start again. Okay. We'll start again. I'm Nadim Rouhana. I'm the director of the Faris Center for Eastern Mediterranean Studies at the Fletcher School at Tufts University and a faculty member at the school. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome Elias Khoury, a prominent, perhaps the foremost Lebanese novelist and a leading Arab public intellectual, to the Fletcher School at Tufts University and to the Center for Humanities. He will discuss Arab culture in the face of oppression and decadence, and how can culture confront such political and social realities? We would have appreciated the opportunity to welcome Elias Khoury as our guest in person. But given the ongoing pandemic, we opted for the second best possibility and will keep hoping to have that privilege of having Elias Khoury in person in the future. Elias Khoury, a good friend, will be shortly introduced by my good colleague, Kamran Rastegar, the director of the Center for the Humanities at Tufts. This event is jointly sponsored by the Center for the Humanities and the Fletcher School. Planning this event was the result of a strategic decision of our two centers to cooperate with the explicit goal of emphasizing the importance of exposing ourselves, students, scholars, and the whole community to the multifaceted cultures of the Middle East and their vitality. We want to add this side of the Middle East to our study of its history, politics, conflicts, and revolutions, and thereby expand the limited lens of looking at the region through security concerns. Through our two Tufts centers, Kamran Rastegar and I are hoping to institutionalize this particular seminar as an annual event and to organize a number of other activities around the cultures of the region. Starting such a project with a talk by Elias Khoury is a major stepstone. So I now turn the floor to my colleague, Kamran Rastegar, to introduce Elias Khoury. Kamran?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nadim, for that introduction and for outlining sort of the broader vision that brought this event together. And Nadim was key in the planning of this event and helping us to organize it. So I thank him and look forward to further cooperation between the Center for Humanities and the Fire Center at the Fletcher School. I want to begin also, well, first I should introduce myself. As Nadim kindly introduced me, I'm the director of the Center for Humanities. I'm a professor in the Department for International Literary and Cultural Studies, and I have a joint appointment in the Department for Studies in Race, Colonialism, and Diaspora at Tufts. I want to begin also by acknowledging the work that our administrators put into this, Courtney McDermott and Rachel Carrillo of the Fire Center, and Rachel, of course, of Center for Humanities. I'll begin our event by introducing Mr. Khoury. I'll speak for a few minutes. I don't want to take up too much time because we're here really to hear his comments, but I think it might be helpful and useful for us all to remind ourselves of the reason why Elias Khoury is such an important figure for us to be listening to at this time. Elias Khoury was born in a middle-class family in Lebanon in the summer of 1948, and his life was shaped by the contours of the events that took place in that year. Of course, we all know that 1948 brought the war that established the State of Israel and was also the origin point for the Palestinian Nakba, or catastrophe. For Lebanon as well, 1948 was no less of a turning point, given the impact that that small nation felt by the arrival of the tens of thousands of Palestinian refugees that became long-term residents there, and the state of war that has defined the southern borders between Lebanon and what became the State of Israel in that year. Khoury grew up in the neighborhood of Ashrafiyeh, and he has wonderful reminiscences of that in various books of his and in comments that he's made. Ashrafiyeh is considered now as the sort of the heart of East Beirut, as a quote-unquote Christian community, although I think that's it's much more complex than that. And he entered into adulthood experiencing the increasing tensions and polarizations that would provide the spark of the Lebanese Civil War, which broke out in 1975. In the years before the war, Khoury's interest and commitments brought him into direct contact with Palestinians. He was a volunteer, a tutor, and eventually a committed activist, a fidai, with the Palestinians. But these commitments did not separate him from his scholarly and literary interests. He completed high school and graduated from the Lebanese University before he traveled to Paris in the early 1970s to complete a PhD in social history. Upon his return from France to Beirut in 1972, he more fully involved himself in cultural work, serving alongside literary figures such as Adonis, Kamal Bulata, Hisham Shirabi, Mona Saudi, and Mahmoud Darwish on the editorial board of the journal Mawaqif. He also served as the editor of Shu'un Palestiniya for a period that coincided with the first years of the long civil war. It was in that period that Elias Khoury also began to pen novels that addressed the experiences of his war-torn homeland, writing critically of the ways by which the war warped and altered that society, even as he remained committed to the Palestinian issue. But his literary expressions were often not in tune with the forms of committed literature that were celebrated by the combatants in the war. By the 1980s, despite his long record of work with Palestinian institutions, he has said that, quote, some considered him to be against the revolution, unquote. As a novelist, also, he was at odds with what was viewed as the preeminent literary cultural form in his milieu, which was poetry. Despite this, his work spoke to the lived experiences of the war in a way that was absolutely unique and new. Even as it embraced the metaphysical, ethical, and psychological dimensions of these experiences, often through experimental prose that moves between registers and dialects, and through the use of surrealist techniques. Over the course of the 1980s, Khoury more fully immersed himself into the world of literary writing and also into criticism, publishing 7 books alongside his editorial work. In the late 1980s and into the 1990s, a number of his works began to appear in translations, in particular into English, that began to give him a greater international audience and recognition for his work. So we had translations of novels such as The Journey of Little Gandhi, Gates of the City, Little Mountain, and Kingdom of Strangers that all worked to garner him new international readerships. However, it was in 1998 with his work Bab Shams, which is translated in 2006 with the title Gate of the Sun, that a work that's considered by many as a masterpiece, which brought him the greatest renown. As a work, it draws upon oral traditions and the structure of pre-modern tales, such as those found in The 1001 Nights, to weave the tapestry of Palestinian experience after 1948. The work has been translated into many languages. Noteworthy among them, of course, its translation into Hebrew, in an edition that was published with Khoury's express blessings and involvement. Later, the noted Egyptian director Yusri Nasrallah directed a major cinematic adaptation of the novel, which only increased its audience. In the years since, Khoury has written a number of further literary works, which are now almost instantly subject to translation, which continue to garner him international accolades. These include Yalo, which was in the early 2000s, As Though She Were Sleeping in 2007, and most recently, a multi-volume work, which has been published under the English name, My Name is Adam, Children of the Ghetto. And I just heard right now that the 2nd volume of that will be coming out soon, and the 3rd volume in Arabic will be published also soon, hopefully. In the interest of time, I'll curtail outlining Elias Khoury's further accomplishments so that we can direct our collective attention to our distinguished speaker. He will be speaking today on with the title, The Culture of Challenge, Arabic Culture in the Face of Oppression and Decadence. I think it's a most timely and important title for us to consider. Please join me in welcoming Elias Khoury.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nadim. Thank you, Kamran. Thanks for inviting me and for hearing me. I would like to start by confessing that accepting your invitation to speak from a devastated city called Beirut and to try to analyze the twin problem of oppression and decadence had put me in a difficult situation. If you are expecting answers, you will be disappointed because I have no answers. What I will propose here are some questions that I am facing as a citizen of a suspended country and as a writer who is trying to hear the broken words of silence. I am not referring here to the pandemic that reminded us of the human fragility on one hand and obliged us to face the savagery of capitalism in the age of globalization on the other. This issue needs to be treated on its own. I'm referring to Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine, where the peoples of these three countries are facing a terrible combination of plague, despotism, occupation, and forced immigrations. A combination that is changing the meaning of exile. The most difficult exile is the exile in your own homeland. This type of exile that was first experienced by some Palestinians after the Nakba of 1948 is generalized now in the Arab world. The combination of despotism and occupation is now the new era of the continuous Nakba of Palestine and the Arab Levant. From where I'm going to start. The first idea that came to my mind was to tell you a story that affected me as a writer. I thought that retelling the story of the village Bab al-Shams, Gate of the Sun, that was created in 2013 by a group of Palestinian militants on confiscated land in the outskirts of Jerusalem would be a demonstration of the impact that literature can have on reality. The village of tents survived 3 days, then was destroyed by the Israeli army. But I didn't know what to tell you about this experience that I witnessed from afar on Skype from Beirut. Shall I speak about the fascinating moment of the creation of the village by 300 young women and men who challenged the occupation through creating a reality from words? Or shall I speak about the terrible moment of the destruction of the village and the brutalities used by the Israeli army? My village was destroyed, but it's still there, like more than 400 Palestinian villages destroyed during the war of the Nakba of 1948. I thought it's not adequate to speak about a moment that happened in the recent past. I'd rather speak about the present. Now I'm speaking to you from my home in Beirut that was devastated by the terrible explosion of August 4, 2020. This explosion that destroyed the port and 1/3 of the city came as a climax of the counter-revolution that tried to oppress the biggest popular uprising in the history of Lebanon. This uprising was a reply to a deep crisis that was questioning the basis of a political system led by the bankers and warlords with a confessional practice that is declaring the inability of the dominant oligarchy to govern. The first question that everybody asked after the explosion was, is this Beirut? I tried to find Beirut between the rubbles and discovered that only poetry can help me. I do not know from where Mahmoud Darwish got the metaphor of the apple to describe Beirut, as he does in his poem named after the city. New York is the big apple, or so New Yorkers describe it. So now we have two apples, a big apple on the shores of the Atlantic and a little apple on the Mediterranean. The two apples have a number of common denominators. Both are realms that exist outside of the space they inhabit. New York, according to Paul Auster, is not part of America. And Beirut, according to the city's own account of its tragic history, is not part of Lebanon. Two apples hanging from metaphor's branch, two apples of temptation, creativity, and misunderstanding. New York is not Babylon, and Beirut is not Sodom. Two apples containing within them every contradiction, from Fifth Avenue to Greenwich Village, and from Hamra and Gemmayzeh to Ashrafiyeh and Basta. While the New York apple appears immune to and able to overcome the tragedy of its twin towers, destroyed in 2001, the Beirut apple lives through one wave of destruction after another. Each city is a mirror, and it's the mirror's fate that while those who pass before it see themselves, it retains no memory of them. Its memory is fashioned from the brand left on its body by passersby. Beirut was born as a pine tree on the shores of the Mediterranean, founded by the people of Jbeil. It became a major Roman presence before entering a long historical slumber from which it woke only in the 19th century, when the city was re-established as a port for the Syrian hinterland. A new city then, whose port began to expand in the mid-19th century and that lives today a moment not unlike the agony of death, as though the monstrous explosion did not simply blast the city and destroy almost one third of it, but came also to deliver the kiss of death to an Arab Levant murdered by occupation and tyranny. And even though Beirut may not be an apple, it's extremely hard to find a logical answer to a question put to me by my son when he was a child. We were listening to passages from Darwish's poem Beirut when the song came to the part about Beirut being an apple. بيروت تفاحة والقلب لا يضحك وحصارنا واحة في عالم يهلك سنرقص الساحة ونزوج الليلة. Beirut is an apple, yet the heart does not smile. An oasis besieged in a year of killing, we shall make the square dance, taking the relax as our partners. My son asked in wonder, an apple? You mean we can eat it? His sister exploded in laughter and tried to explain to us that apple didn't mean apple. It means like an apple. So things became more complicated. I said that apple was a metaphor, and the metaphors say one thing, so we can mean another. We could not explain the meaning of the apple metaphor, but the rhyme of the music intoxicated all three of us. Literature is an attempt to get around language's inability to name things by inventing new names wrapped in the rhymes of the senses and the possibilities of speech. But we have seen the monster gnaw through the metaphor's back and tear the apple to pieces. The smell of wine mixing with water, which Abu Nawas said made him think of the apples of Lebanon, has been replaced today by the smells of death. On August the 4th, 2020, we saw a kind of ending. The shattered glass became the city's eyes, strewn over the rubble-covered asphalt. The wounds bleed. The wound bleeds from the eyes, and Beirut sees itself for the first time in broken mirrors. As we walked over the eyes of the city towards the center of darkness, we found our way by following the gouts of blood that had seeped from the thousands of the wounded. The destruction of Beirut reflects the destruction of the whole region. The city that played the role of the mirror of the modern Arabic culture reflects now, through its pieces, the end of an era that have three dimensions. The first dimension is the end of the prophetic culture. 29 years after the publication of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, Mikhail Naimi published Mirdad, 1952. These two books followed the path of Amin al-Rihani, who was the first modern Arabic writer to climb the tree of prophecy with his work, The Book of Khalid, 1911. The series of prophecies, an outcome of the literary emigrations to North America, came to deal in an individual way with the problems of social and confessional fragmentations in Bilad al-Sham, the Levant, through creating a prophetic synthesis that can unite different religious affiliation. I can argue that these prophetic works were not only a kind of continuation of the classical Arab literary paradigm, poet, king, prophet, that reached its peak with the poetry of Al-Mutanabbi, 10th century, but were mainly a kind of a reply to the questions that the Nahdawi and the modern Arab lit culture in the Levant tried not to deal with. The question of the Lebanese war in the 19th century, 1840-1860, which was decisive in the creation of the Lebanese entity and whose reverberations reached Damascus. The literary and cultural reply to the combination of colonialism, modernity, and confessional awareness was oblique. The reply of the founders of the Nahda, or the Renaissance in the Levant, was the adoption of the Arab national idea and the struggle for independence and Arab unity with a curious way of silencing the memories of the Lebanese civil war. But with the prophecies of the three Lebanese writers who wrote their books in English, the reply was formulated as a form of preaching a new religious ideological belief that can go beyond the differences and create a kind of a new synthesis. The special popular success of Khalil Gibran is due to two elements: its special poetic style on one hand, and its direct relationship with the language of the Gospels on the other, a language that was the outcome of the translations of the Bible by Ahmad Faris al-Shidyaq and Nasif al-Yazji and Butros al-Bustani. This language will not only leave its traces on Khalil Gibran, but will also play a major role in modernizing the language and in the creation of the modern standard Arabic. What is worth noting here is that this prophetic wave will not be limited to the literary field, but will take more serious religious forms. One can refer here to the Palestinian Salim al-Ashi, known as Dahish Bey, 1901-1984, who created in Beirut a new religion that became popular between many professionals and intellectuals and threatened the rule of Bashar al-Khoury, the first president of the independent Lebanon, and to Sulaiman al-Murshid, the God, or Ar-Rab, 1907-1946, who was executed in Syria under the presidency of Shukri al-Quwatli. This God was able, with the aid of the French colonial authorities, to invent a new religion derived from the Alawite sect. Can we push the idea a little further in order to find a link between some political ideological new structures and this phenomenon? What about the Madrahiyya philosophy, which is a combination of the material and the spiritual of the founder of the Syrian Popular Party, Antoun Saadi, and his attempt to create a national secular unity based upon his assumption that Islam has two ways, Christianity and Mohammedism. Can't we also argue that the famous text of the founder of the Ba'ath Party, Michel Afla, in the memory of the Arab prophet, alongside with Saadi's Madrahism, were a kind of a special continuation of the literary prophecies of the three Mahjari writers. What is the relationship between the prophets of the early 20th century and the military coups that took the Arabs towards the heart of darkness and defeat? The historian Constantin Zrey, who coined the term Nakba, used in his book The Meaning of the Nakba the term coup or inqilab to define the social and political change needed in order to face the Nakba of Palestine. This term, used by a major thinker of the Arab national movement, blurred the differences between a military coup and a revolution. Coups became a version of the idea of the revolution, and they led the Arab world in the path of dictatorship. The second phenomenon is the defeat and the defeated ideology. All the prophecies proved to be useless, and the idea of rebirth that dominated the Arabic literature and the nationalist political discourse proved to be wrong in the face of the disaster of the defeat of June 1967. The book by the Syrian thinker and writer Yassin al-Hafiz, The Defeat and the Defeated Ideology, opened the door of the democratic revolutionary thought and fueled the dream of a third Nahda or Renaissance, which can only begin with a democratic revolution. The door was opened for what can call the post-prophetic literature. This literature finds its roots in a curious mixture of symbolic and realistic approaches, and its production came few years before the defeat of 67. We can trace the beginning of the change with three works. The first is a long poem by the Lebanese Khalil Hawi, sorry, called Eliezer in the year 1963. Hawi was one of what were referred to as the Tammuz poet. Tammuz being the mythical Sumerian god of fertility and vegetation who is reborn every year. This Tammuzi poets were an avant-garde group that played a central role in establishing the new Arab poetry. In his youth, Khalil Hawi belonged to the Syrian National Social Party, but later adopted the Arab nationalist thinking and wrote his epic River of Ash. This work, together with the works of his fellow Tammuz poets, Adonis, Jabra Ibrahim Jabra, and Badr Shakir al-Sayyab, called for a cultural and political rebirth. In 1963, Hawi reversed the accepted wisdom in a long poem in which the Hebrew hero, Eleazar, refutes the Jesus of Nazareth miracle of the rising from the dead. After the dismantling of the Egyptian-Syrian United Arab Republic, Hawi penned the Song of Death that announced the failure of rebirth and its futility, in contrast to the songs of the god Tammuz or Adonis that celebrate rebirth. It was as if Hawi saw the clear indicators of the coming destruction and expressed it through his hero Eliezer's words. الجماهير التي يعلكها دولاب نار من أنا حتى أرد النار عنها والدوار عمق الحفرة يا حفار عمقها لقاع لا قرار. The masses that are being chewed up by the wheel of fire, who am I to protect them from the fire and from the vertigo? Make the pit deeper, make it bottomless. During the Israeli invasion of Beirut in 1982, Hawi committed suicide with a hunting gun. The second is Ghassan Kanafani's short novella, Men in the Sun, which was published in Beirut 1963. The metaphorical novel was the start of a new Palestinian narrative after the Nakba. It can be considered the first literary work in what Edward Said called the post-Mahfouzian novel. The Arab literary critics considered this novel to be a call to action and for collective resistance. The novel was considered a response to the Nakba of 1948. However, Abu al-Khayzaran, the driver of the truck that took the three Palestinians to their death, took a new symbolism after the 1967 defeat. He now represented the impotent leadership that led the Arabs and the Palestinians to their disastrous destiny. After the defeat of 67, Kanafani, who had begun his political and literary life as a member of the Arab nationalist movement, became one of the leaders of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the most influential Palestinian literary voice of the time. He was assassinated by the Israeli intelligence services in the Hazmiya suburb of Beirut in 1972. I pause now at the third short novel by the Egyptian Sun'Allah Ibrahim, titled That Smell, which was published in Cairo in 1966 and represented the start of a new literary wave in Egypt. He was accused of having communist allegiances and imprisoned no less than 5 years in Egypt. After his release, he wrote this novel about his personal experience in prison, where he shares with us the discovery that Cairo itself had become a huge prison and that the repression by Nasser's intelligence services had made writing a near impossibility. The novel was banned in Egypt under the guise of harming public morality, and the protagonist's impotence was ridiculed by the censors. These literary works represent three different samples of the defeat of the ideas that dominates during the periods of coups revolution of the military elite that was allied with the nationalist intellectual elite. For Hawi, it developed into an existential tone that asked many questions about the use of the idea of rebirth that took hold over Arab poetry in the 50s and early 60s. For Kanafani, it was clear in his view of the impotence of the leadership and people's total surrender to individual solutions. While Ibrahim presented it in his views on oppression and tyranny. After the June defeat, there was an avalanche of cultural rage and criticism, where Nizar Qabbani took center stage. This changed, however, when Palestinian poetry, most profoundly that of Mahmoud Darwish, found its lost voice and spoke of the continuing Palestinian Nakba as a human wound. The Arab novel from Naguib Mahfouz to Emil Habibi and Gamal Ghitani to the literature of the Lebanese war would present a new approach to daily life in an innovative language that was a basis for an open style of fiction. Arab cultural life bubbled over with unprecedented anger after the 5th of June defeat, which was an indication that it was about to renew itself, a renewal that was dominated by the rise of the Palestinian resistance and the initiation of the new intellectual ideas as expressed by Abdullah al-Arawi, Yassin al-Hafiz, and Sadiq Jalal al-Azm. These were attempts that presented different interpretations of the situation to the readers regarding how to rise from the mire the Arabs found themselves in. They fluctuated between a call to historicism that passes through liberalism to the adoption of pure logical thinking and Marxist critique of religion. Yassin Hafiz may have been the first to have looked at the defeat through the lens of Marxist logic in his book, Defeat and the Defeated Ideology. The Marxist intellectual who had Ba'athist roots advocated the reversal of the Arabs' backwardness through new enlightening, modernizing thought rooted in Gramsci's historicism and drawing on Larawi's understanding of contemporary Arab ideology. Contrary to Al-Hafiz, Sadiq Jalal al-Azm, through his work as editor-in-chief of the Dirasat Arabiya Journal, the Journal of Arab Studies, was close to the Palestinian experience, particularly to the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, who had adopted communist ideology without taking on the experience of the Arab communist parties. His book, Self-Criticism After the Defeat, raised Al-Azm's status considerably, and this was further reinforced after the publication of his two books, Critique of Religious Thought and the Critique of the Palestinian Resistance Thought. He occupied a pivotal role in the Arab intellectual space, particularly after having been arrested in Lebanon and taken to court over a study in his book, Critique of Religious Thought, that presented a secular analysis of the Quranic narrative of Satan entitled The Tragedy of Satan. Through the title of his book, Al-Azm presented a clear objection to the Naksa expression, a term coined by the Egyptian journalist Muhammad Hassanein Haikal, stressing the importance of searching for the causes of the defeat in order that Arab societies are cured of its ills. After comparing the Arab defeat in the face of Israel to the Russian defeat to Japan in 1905, Al-Azm put forward a critique of the religious interpretations of the defeat. He lampooned the lack of logic in the discourse that pervaded the Arab leading echelons on the eve of the war. Al-Azm approached with caution the critique of Nasser's less than radical approach, focusing on criticizing the backwardness that prevented the adaptation to modern technologies. Al-Azm's critique of the defeat became a major milestone in the collapse of the prevailing Arab nationalist discourse. It's interesting that Al-Azm, in his cultural, scientific, and educational critique, was unable to escape the theoretical framework of Constantin Zrei outlined in his small book, Ma'na al-Nakba, the meaning of the Nakba, and re-emphasized it after the June 67 defeat in his own work, revisiting the meaning of the Nakba. In other words, Al-Azm's critique remained a philological critique of the world, of the two words Nakba and Naksa. He did not examine the June defeat as a real turning point that allowed for the continuing Nakba that had begun in 1948. The Nakba that had started in 48 continued to overtake all of historic Palestine. It continued yet further until we reach the epic disintegration that we see in current Arab societies in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Libya, or Yemen. It continues to reach heights of repression in Arab states from Egypt to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, adding layers upon layers of ineffectiveness to pre-existing futility and inability. The turning point that the whole region experienced in June 67 indicated the collapse of the nationalist experiment. Two major factors were at play: the death of Jamal Abdel Nasser around the Black September events in Jordan 1970, and the failure of the October War to reach a victory that would force the total retreat of the Israeli army from the occupied territories without any conditions. The third element is the continuous Nakba. After the death of the prophets and the defeat of the military, a new era was beginning. The PLO became the major tool of the Palestinian revival, and the rebuilding the Arab armies proved to be possible. Although the War of October 73 led to a half defeat, half victory, and took the Arab world to the mirage of peace with Israel. The Arab civil wars began with the Lebanese Civil War 1975, and the region went into a new phase of oppression, and the dream of democracy and social justice was still far away. The literature of the new era witnessed the emerge of the individual as the major player, and an experimental literature that will pave the way for the Arab Spring. The autobiography of the Moroccan writer Muhammad Shukri, For Bread Alone, Al-Khubz al-Hafi, was a step towards the liberation of the Arab literature from the dominance of the collective and the attempt to make the reality of the literary work a metaphor, and the novels as a metaphor, and the novels of Abd al-Rahman Munif, especially his major work East Mediterranean, paved the way for the emergence of the Arabic prison literature. When the nightmare of the Lebanese civil war was over, we awoke to three glaring realities. The first reality was that the civil war that we assumed had ended in 1991 was far from over. It had continued in a myriad of wars. The very heart of old Beirut was destroyed in the frenzy of reconstruction intended to reshape Lebanon into the new mediator for what was optimistically referred to as the new phase of peace in the region. After two pivotal historic events, the expulsion of the Israeli occupying forces from the south of Lebanon in the year 2000, and the end of the Syrian mandate over Lebanon in 2005, the resulting renewed political divisions led to the birth of an ostensibly new, but in reality pre-existing political system, which can easily be labeled the ongoing civil war system, in which the Lebanese enjoy a thieves' peace in the midst of a burning Middle East. The thieves' peace took us to a popular uprising which was covered with blood and with the charnels of our destroyed city. The second reality is that the hopes for the elusive peace in Palestine and the region, which had grown after the first Palestinian Intifada and the signing of the Oslo Agreement, began to evaporate. Palestine found itself in the jaws of the beast, with an Israel that is currently institutionalizing and legalizing a clear apartheid system. In the light of this, we urgently redefine the idea of Palestine. The Nakba, considered by historians as the historical event that happened in 1948, shows us its reality as a process and not an event. The continuous Nakba never stopped since 72 years. Its new phase with the domination of the right and the far right on the Israeli politics is taking now the form of apartheid. The Jewish supremacy is leading Israel towards becoming one of the worst oppressive regimes in the region. One can ask, but what about the Abraham agreements and the normalization between Israel and the Arab Emirates and Bahrain and others? And of course, everybody is still waiting Saudi Arabia. It's clear that these agreements have nothing to do with peace. They have two goals. One, the Israeli protection of the regimes from the Iranian threat and from the threat of their own peoples. Second, the recognition by these regimes of the Israeli domination and occupation of Palestine. The normalization has nothing to do with peace, and one must give it its real name: the normalization of despotism and occupation. The third reality is the discovery that the Lebanese civil war, with all its regional and international dimensions, was but a mere practice drill for the current ongoing atrocities faced by the Arab region today, with the mounting numbers of dead and displaced in Syria, Yemen, Libya, and Iraq. The possibilities for the third Arab Renaissance, born out of the recent Arab revolutions demanding the right for bread, freedom, and democracy, have been turned into a nightmarish counter-revolution, attempting to reinstate dictatorships, sectarism, and social fragmentation. The fundamentalist currents that grew out of the Cold War in Afghanistan metamorphosed into a hungry monster colluding with the old regimes to snuff out any dream of change. Arab culture is battling oppression and pain. It's barely surviving in the midst of crumbling global values and creeping globalization. The new liberal capitalist globalization is resulting in a revival of racist, sectarian, and nationalistic movements, and the growth of the fascist ideologies devoted to annihilating humanistic values. How do we begin in the wake of the destruction of all that bestows meaning? It may be that this era we live in is the ideal milieu for writing. A reader of historical catastrophes would be forgiven for thinking as such. When we review the Crusades or the Roman wars or the fall of Baghdad to the Mongols or the fall of Andalusia, it becomes clear that the stories are born almost automatically, since the imagination of the military and criminals is indeed greater than that of writers. It is an imagination free from all moral bounds or human sensibilities. Al-Jahiz stated that poetry was hard work, coloring, and a form of painting. He is right, for the poet or the writer's work is not to invent stories, but these are everywhere, known by all. On the other hand, the Arab classical critic Al-Jurjani contends that a writer crafts literature in order to discover the meaning of meanings. In other words, the hard work of crafting is a pathway to reformulating meaning. Our era, that is supposed to be an ideal era for a writer, in fact, hold a multitude of difficulties. The writer who wishes to be a witness of his time is under actual threat of becoming its victim. It's an era defined by preposterous horrors, but the absurdity of the sectarian and ethnic conflicts and the meaninglessness of the brutal repression are no cure for the horrors we are living through. In fact, it may be an additional reason to adopt silence as the only language fit to capture any meaning. The failure of the rhetoric of dictatorial regimes, having lost all types of logic, turned them into purely repressive machines. This is exemplified by the failure of regimes that were founded on nationalist ideologies, from revolutionary Egypt to the Ba'athist regimes in Syria and Iraq. This failure, nevertheless, possesses an unbound capacity for destruction of societies. The failure of the rhetoric of the left caused its fracture into those who took refuge in the dictatorships under the guise of the fear of Islamist movements or the fear of the rule of the faqih, the rule of the guardian jurist, and those who ascribed to the liberal rhetoric and who soon fell into an American version of human rights movements. Moreover, Islamist rhetoric has been retracing since it demonstrated that far from being a societal unifying power, it's actually a tool for fracturing society and for instigating civil war. When the rhetoric of both the ruling powers and the opposition fail, and when the unifying text disintegrates, we are left with stories that are missing a frame or a structure. The writer's dream of living in historical changing times turn into a real nightmare. Friends, we are already living that very nightmare. So what? I can't say that I don't know. Of course I don't know, but I can't say that I don't know. I know that the imperialist powers are playing with our blood and protecting the Israeli occupation. I know that the intellectual's role is not only to speak, but it's a long struggle to make the silence of the victims speak. I know that we have no choice but to challenge the status quo and to fight with the marginalized and the exiles. I know that this decadence can't and must not last forever. I know that the way to knowledge is to ask questions, and that our questions about how to face the continuous Nakba that is covering the Arab world will help us in creating new words. I can tell you the stories of my stories, from Beirut with its broken mirrors to the imagined village of the Gate of the Sun, and from the pain of Fialo to the silence of Adam and the victims of the Ghetto of Lidda. I have lived and witnessed how the voices of the voiceless can occupy the heavens and can create a new language for a new beginning. The challenge is how to begin again and again. Palestine now is the real exam of humanism everywhere in the world. And the pain of the peoples of the Levant is a reminder of the human values. The challenge is to survive and reinvent life. This is where words can take us in an endless journey where the living is born from the dead. Thank you. خلاص.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to invite people to engage with us, if it's possible, primarily through the chat. I think that's the easier way for us to organize the Q&A. So anyone who would like to propose a question or a comment, please do so by posting something in the chat. And I'd love to put them to Mr. Khoury. And I think we all need a little breath after that tour de force, taking us through modern Arab cultural history and cultural thought, reminding us of the dynamics of the 1960s and 70s generation, the generation that, and even before really, I mean, beginning really from the Nahda, but taking us through the 60s and 70s, and then reminding us of some of the work of your own generation, now arriving at the point that we are today. I think perhaps some of us had hoped for something a little bit more optimistic, and so I'll put that to you, Mr. Khoury, as just a kind of a, you know, a very a plaintive question. You know, taking the bleak picture that we all find ourselves sort of seeing when we look at the region now, I wonder, you know, with the experiences that you're drawing on from 1948 to the Lebanese Civil War, and the moments of catastrophe that mark both of those experiences and many others that also were simultaneous to that period. Can you remind us how we began to sort of, I mean, how hope was crafted through those catastrophes, and maybe we can all look for evidence through that experience in the present moment. Could I invite you to perhaps sort of think with us on those terms for a minute?
Thank you, Kamran. Actually, I understand your remark, but I'm not pessimist. I am like Emil Habibi, best optimist. We are, يعني Emil Habibi coined this word. Actually, he coined the idea of Gramsci, the pessimism of the optimism of the will and the pessimism of the reason. And here we are now. What I'm trying to describe, what I'm trying to speak. You know, one must be loyal to his experience, and one must be loyal to what we are going through. And I cannot give a blind eye to this moment of retreat and of. I didn't speak about the major thing actually, and I didn't speak about the major thing. I intended not to do so. I intended not to speak about the Palestinian situation. First, I didn't want to be very political because I'm not a politician, but also because I thought that to speak about the Palestinian reality now, which is actually a representation of the reality of the Arab Levant, is catastrophical. And but this doesn't mean that we don't have a way out. And you know, now there is this possibility of an election in the occupied territories in the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem, hopefully. And I think that there is in this elections a slight hope, because if really we arrive, Marwan Barghouti, the leader of the second Intifada, who has seven life sentences in the Israeli prisons. If Barghouti will do it and will be elected from his prison, I think the whole image will change, because first of all it will become an adequate image, because the Palestine is in prison, and it must be led by a president like Barghouti. And then all this myths of peace and waiting for the Americans and so on will stop. So I don't think that things are totally closed, but I think that what we are facing is a major challenge to change the whole ways of thinking, of struggling, because I still feel that I'm a militant. when I spoke about the uprising in Lebanon, I was all the time in the streets with the young people, and if I can tell you how many gas bombs I have in my body, you will be astonished. But so I'm speaking also as a militant, not only as an intellectual who's outsider, etc. I think we have to see reality in order to be able to change it. And if we don't see this line, and I thought I have drawn a line from the early 20th century with this prophetic ideology, with this stupid book that is adored in America, yani, the Prophet of Khalil Gibran, which I think it's a very bad literature. But anyway, uh, 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 from all this prophetic approach, which led us to the concept of the coup d'etats, of the coups, of the elite, which is outside society, and which was it's totally now meaningless, and it's totally has now no discourse to speak. Uh, uh, and I think which led the Arab Levant, not only to the defeat with Israel, but also to an interior defeat, because it disintegrated our societies. I think rethinking this ideology now is very important in order to find a way out. And I'm sure we will find a way out. Now, I'm not a politician. I write stories, and you cannot ask a novelist to be optimistic, because he'd be stupid. You cannot have optimistic literature. You can have literature, and literature that describes reality, and that tries to find the inner elements or waves in this reality. This is what I'm trying to do. Now, in this text that I presented here, I tried to be as authentic as possible and to speak really about what I now is thinking, how I'm thinking, how I'm facing this as a writer and as an intellectual, how I'm facing this situation, which is a combination of situations, and how we can make from it some sense. Yes, yes, Nadim. Nadim.
Yeah, I would, we would like to give the audience more space to ask, but I think this is a fantastic tour of Arab culture and politics. I wish you mentioned the names of the people Al-Jahid and others, which century they lived, to make the connection between the modern and the historic. You ended with a remarkable metaphor, Elias, and that is stories without a frame. And you are both a novelist and a public intellectual. And as a novelist, you are one of the major people in the Arab world creating these stories through what both you mentioned and Kamran mentioned. But you are a public intellectual too, and I was wondering if I can push you a little bit, thinking about the frame that you envision or you think of that can put together these stories. I hope this is a fair question and not putting you too much, pushing you beyond your area of comfort.
No, of course you are right, but we have to put into consideration that we are part of an international crisis of the left. I consider myself a lefty Marxist, and I think we are in a deep crisis to form. We have to, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the catastrophe of Stalinism and dictatorship and so on and so forth, which we were criticizing during. I was young, but I was part of this criticism of the Soviet bureaucracy and the Soviet political system. But But we have to witness that after this fall, the left and all this, let's say, humanistic leftist thought went into a crisis. Until now, we have seen this. We have seen this in America and Occupy Wall Street, for example, which led nowhere. We have seen this in Spain. We have seen this in France with the Gilets jaunes. We have seen this everywhere. Everywhere, we are searching for a new beginning, and we are part of that. We cannot separate ourselves from that. Now, what is particular in our situation is that we are facing a real disintegration of societies, and we have to face this disintegration. Syria is no more a country. Syria is occupied by 5 armies. Five. The Russians, the Americans, the Iranians, the Turks. Can you imagine? Syria now is no more one country. Lebanon, I don't know if it's still a country. Now, what's taking place in Palestine? This idea of Bandostans, taken from the South African experience. I think the Israelis are implementing it all over the West Bank, whereas Gaza is the biggest open-air ghetto in the world, in the history of the world. So we are this disintegration of our societies. We can only face through creating new values. The struggle is the struggle of values. So recreating the values of democracy, social justice. Otherwise, we go nowhere. And unfortunately, we are not seeing our problems as one. I think the problem of Palestine, the problem of Lebanon, the problem of Syria are one. Separating them or not seeing the common denominator in them will lead us nowhere. You cannot struggle against occupation in Palestine and applaud the dictator in Damascus. You cannot struggle in Lebanon against the dominant oligarchy and give a blind eye to the occupation of Palestine. So we have to see it in its all dimensions, in all its dimensions, and seeing it in all its dimensions means that we have to reinvent. I don't speak about a nationalist discourse. I speak about a regional discourse. To reinvent a discourse of unity against the dominant classes and against occupation. And I think we are beginning a new battle. We are in the edge of a beginning, not in the edge of an end. But beginning and end are very similar. You cannot begin without ending something. And when they mix together, they give you this impression that we are living in a very tough daily life and daily situation. I hope I replied.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a few questions already in the chat that have come to me. So if you'll allow, I'll try to pose them. I might reframe little bits. So if anyone, I hope that I won't be changing the meaning of anything that someone has submitted. Perhaps I'll start with the question from Professor Alan Henriksen that asks that Arnold Toynbee, who had a strong interest in the Middle East, also used the terms challenge and response with an emphasis on the role of leadership, which needed to offer the prospect of a better life beyond only survival. So the question is, does leadership in the Middle East, especially today, require having a prophetic vision, emphasis on prophetic, or does it need to be practical in relation to economics, technology, and politics?
Yeah. You want me to reply for every question or what?
I can ask. We have a couple of others, so perhaps I'll ask a couple at a time, and then you can discuss them together. I think this is actually quite a similar sort of impetus to a question from Akili Kelekele, I hope that I'm pronouncing the name correctly, that asks, what would your potential cause to action be, in achieving an overall pursuit of justice? It's a very broad question, but I think we understand what's being asked. And finally, I think again, a sort of similar thread here from Zainab Lami, asking what your advice is to young Arab creatives who inherit this culture and literary legacy while they are simultaneously having to contend with oppression and chaos. What is your advice for this new generation, I presume is what is meaning, to interact with these realities and turn them into a generative experience, adding to the intellectual legacy, but also positively reshaping our reality?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Of course, challenge and response, but the question was from Professor Henriksson, I think. It will be secular or will it be prophetic or practical?
Mm-hmm.
Now, things are combined. First of all, I think it must be. There is noise in my ears. I think someone is opening his. I think it must be first secular to begin with, and secular with all means, that khalas, finishing the prophetic things, and trying to put together our experiences and to formulate from them a new approach. And I think we are in a moment where the tough experiences that we went through, not only in Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine, also after the two intifadas in Palestine and after the popular uprising in Lebanon and Syria, what we are facing everywhere in Egypt, also in Iraq, and so on and so forth. What we are facing is how to combine our struggle against dictatorship, and against a one-dimensional ideological society like the Islamist one-dimensional, or like those who are madly anti-Islam. Because both of them are in the same place. They are both prophetic in a way or another. So how to put together our experiences in a new approach. And I think this is very, very difficult. What can I say from where I am? To be honest, and to be humble also. From where I am, from Beirut, what can I say is that the struggle in Lebanon, which is maybe the toughest struggle on earth, because we don't have one dictator, we have 6 dictators. Every leader of a confessional of sectarian group is a dictator, and they are fighting each other, but they are also in alliance against us, which is bizarre, which is a very, very problematic situation. From this experience, I can say that there is a new awareness. This new awareness cannot topple regimes in 1 year or 2 years. This new awareness cannot change in the short level. But this awareness can be built on in order to reinvent. What does it mean? Lebanon, for example, let's speak about Lebanon. Lebanon was either like the way that Said put it, that is a part of heaven. So it's not a real country. Searching for our Phoenician ancestors, and all this bullshit of the past and so on. Or Lebanon was only a part taken from Syria in 1920. Actually, neither this nor that. Lebanon is neither this nor that. We have to realize that Lebanon is a country with all its problems, and we have to deal with it, to deal with its real problems. That is the problems of the economic and social injustice in this country, the problems of this terrible crisis, the terrible bankruptcy of the banks and of the governing elite that is being governing us since eternity, and to formulate a new popular movement. And I think this is on the way. But now I cannot be optimistic. I'm optimistic in this sense, but I cannot tell you that everything is okay. Everything is not okay. We are just trying here or in Syria, even in Palestine. Look at Palestine. Yeah, in Palestine there was this rift between Hamas and Fatah, which is now reverberated inside the so-called historic Palestine, that is inside the green line, inside Israel itself. And we have, for the first time, a terrible misunderstanding represented by these two lists that went for the Knesset, and the possibilities of the Islamist list to ally with Netanyahu. So we have a situation which must be rebuilt from the beginning. And here I see that criticizing or looking critically at our history, and for me, this is what I do, at our intellectual history, is essential to build the new approach. Now, this is also my personal approach to reply to the second question. Now to the third question, I actually I learned something in this Lebanese intifada. I learned a very important lesson. I learned that I have to learn from the young people. So don't tell us what to do. I'm asking them to tell me. We have to ask each other what to do together. And really, for me, the streets of Beirut during all the last year was a big school to learn more, to learn about my society, and to tell you the truth, to love. You know, I used to think that the Lebanese, as they show themselves on television, they are silly. There is something silly in Lebanon. For the first time in the Intifada, in the streets of Beirut, in these huge demonstrations, I felt for the first time that they are so nice and they are lovable if they liberate themselves from this frame, from this terrible frame of what is to be Lebanese. And you find that there is a new Lebanese which can come out in a struggle like that. So don't ask me what to tell the new generation. I want to ask you, and we want to work together, and we have to find the replies together. Yes.
Thank you. I'm looking at the clock and noticing that we have a little bit of time left, but not very much time. So I'm just mindful of that. We have two questions. So I don't know if there's enough time to address both of them fully, but I'll put them to you, and then we can close with your response to them. One is from, I believe, a student here at Tufts, Nate George, writing, "Thank you for your rich discussion. I'm wondering what, if anything, you think can be salvaged from the Arab national idea of the 20th century, which was, after all, a common framework for action across the region that cut across social and sectarian difference. Can there be coordinated regional action that you call for without a narrative of who we are, or I should say who we are, what we have experienced and where we are going?" And then the second question is from Professor Emily Drumsta, writing, "Thank you so much for your critical reading of Gibran's The Prophet and Rouhani's Book of Khalid, and what you call the prophetic strain of early 20th century Arab and Mahjari writing. I completely share this opinion. And thanks also for the tour through post-1967 Arabic literature. I had not thought of many of these connections before. I'm wondering, what contemporary novelist, poet, and thinkers writing in Arabic do you appreciate now? I often feel like the contemporary landscape is so fragmented and uneven in terms of the quality.
For the first question, yes, of course, many things can be preserved from the Arab national ideal. The one thing is that we are all Arab, that we are Arabs because we speak Arabic and our culture is Arabic. That's all. Not because like the Ba'athists would tell us that we have an eternal message, or not because like Anton Saadi will tell us we are different from because our claim are different, or all this nationalist fascist discourse. We are Arabs because we are Arab. We speak Arabic. This is one culture with diversity, and we must know that Arab culture was always diverse. You know, when any beginners in the studies of the Quran, he will know that the Quran can be read in 7 languages. إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَحْرُفٍ, which means that there were 7 dialects, which is different dialects in Arabia. Before now we have the Shami dialect and the Egyptian dialect and the North African dialect and so on. We all the time we had differences, and all the time our societies was opened, and we have in all our history we have minorities. We have Christians and Jews. We have great poets in the classical time who were Jews and Christians, and until now they are there. So it's a society, a unified society with many inner differences, which we have to accept. We have to accept that the Kurds in Syria and Iraq have the right for their language and for creating their state. We have to accept that the Amazighs in Morocco have the right for their language, because this is how things are. This doesn't mean that we are not all in this realm of Arabic culture. And what's interesting, the Arab what we call the Arab Spring, which began in Tunisia actually, for the first time in the history of demonstrations, the demonstrations were reciting a slogan in classical Arabic. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. It was in classical Arabic, not in colloquial. And it was said all over the Arab world, from Morocco to Bahrain. And it's based upon one line of poetry by the Tunisian great poet. So what we have, there is this unity, of course, but diversity in unity, which we have to accept. And from this, can we create a new entity? Of course we can, but we have to work on it in a rational, decent way. But this cannot happen without democracy. This will never happen without coming to a democratic societies. Because with dictatorships, you can never tell what the imaginary of Sisi will come out. 2 weeks ago, it came out with the pharaohs in the streets of Cairo. Tomorrow, it can come out with Amr ibn al-Asi in the streets of Cairo. So anything, this must be in a democratic region where we can discuss our diversities and build our unity. And it's a very difficult unity because the Arabs did never had one state except for 90 years in their whole history, since except in the Umayyad period. After that, there was no one. The Arab world was not one piece. So we have to accept this history and stop bringing this stupid idea of the nation state or of the German nationalism, which dominated a lot the Arab thought and which led us to catastrophe. We need something new, something different. And this can be built on. And being Arabs, of course we are Arabs because I write in Arabic, I cannot write in English. Of course I write in Arabic and I use Shami colloquial, but This colloquial can be understood everywhere in the Arab world, and vice versa. You now can take a novel written in Morocco in classical Arabic, and from the first lines you will discover, you will understand by yourself, even if you don't know who is the writer, that this is a writer from either Morocco or Algeria. It's very clear in the structure of the sentence itself. So this diversity is very beautiful, I think. Now now speaking about the contemporary literature, Arabic literature, or Arabic artistic scene, I think we are going through a very rich moment, maybe the richest moment, which is waiting its critiques, people to analyze it. I think there is a huge revolution in the novel itself, in the ways of writing, very innovative, and I can speak from my personal experience for the first time. Naguib Mahfouz was translated since I don't know how much, but he was Naguib Mahfouz. All the scholars in Arabic literature will know that he was read in the European and American circles as a testimony, as a social testimony. You read Naguib Mahfouz in order to understand Cairo. Now, our literature is not only read like that. Of course, you read an Arabic novel. This is Arabic, but it's more. It is very innovative, very new, style on the style level, on the structure level, on the linguistic level, and so on. And I think this we see it on the performance arts. We have great names now in the Arab in the world who are Arabs. We have great names in cinematography. We have a new movie. So there is a huge wave of culture, which needs to be, and it's not my job to do it because I'm part of it. It's the job of scholars like you to do it. That is how to classify it, to understand it, and to put it in categories. But but and of course, when you have a big cultural production, there is one important thing about the cultural production. We don't have anymore a cultural center in the Arab world after the destruction of Beirut, which inherited Cairo actually to become the cultural center. We don't have a cultural center, which gives things, which makes things very ambiguous for everybody, even for us. Many words do not reach us. There is no place of canalization and so on. But nonetheless, there is an attempt to put in words and in theater and in movies and so on these questions that I tried to raise before you, the questions of the daily life, our daily life, and practically this began with the Lebanese novel, the so-called Lebanese novel of the war, and the Lebanese novel. When I began, I wrote Little Mountain very early in 1976, and when it was published in Arabic in 1977 and then translated to French and English, everybody. I remember Emil Habibi came to me and told me, "How dare you give Christian names to your heroes or Islamic names?" I said, "But they are Christians and Muslims. What's the problem?" He said, "I never dare. You have to make neutral things." I said, "No. If you want to write the daily life, if you want to write the present, you represent it with the language of the present." And now, of course, because there is a huge production, there are, of course, levels of production, like any literature everywhere in the world. You have the literature, the popular, let's say, bestsellers, bullshit everywhere, and we have it in Arabic, of course. and we have the avant-garde literature, which is also everywhere in the world. So it's not the matter is not the content or the level. The matter is this is not now organized because we are living in it. We need time. You know, after our death, we will go on and organize things, and you'll see.
Okay, I think that we're a little over time. We've taken too much of your time. Elias, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and for the generosity, the insights, and for guiding us. I thank you. I think on behalf of everyone here, and I want to echo what Nadim said, that we look forward to bringing you here in person soon. And we wish you all the best, until we see you again.
Thank you, Elias.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Nadim and Kamran, and especially Kamran. I've seen him since a long time. I didn't see him since when he was young. Now he's a great professor. I'm proud of him. Thank you very much, and yalla, inshallah, next time when we meet, we will be more optimistic. I promise.
Next year in Boston, yes.
Next year, yalla, inshallah. Salam.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.